on with the TMCC Library Open Genealogy Lab Outstanding Guest Speaker Series. Today, we are pleased to present Barbara Milligan. Barbara is a seasoned nonprofit professional with 30 years of experience leading and growing organizations, primarily in the fields of history, arts, and culture. She has served as the CEO of numerous organizations in southeastern Massachusetts and has also held the position of Director Curator for both the Plymouth Antiquarian Society and the Historical Society of Old Yarmouth. Her expertise includes fundraising, public relations, business management, exhibitions and programs, archival and curatorial management, historical research, and genealogy. She has a master's degree in public history, holds a certificate in nonprofit management and leadership, and is the author of Images in Time. Barbara is presently the Director of Research for the General Society of Mayflower Descendants based in Plymouth, Massachusetts. And in today's presentation, she's going to be discussing the Mayflower Society and their genealogical record holdings. So I'd like to offer a warm virtual welcome to Barbara.
Thank you, Suzanne. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And Happy New Year, since we're almost to the new year. Today, I thought I would talk a little bit about who we are at the Mayflower Society, what historical resources we offer, and how you might approach your own Mayflower genealogy if you think you have a Mayflower ancestor. So we'll start with the General Society Mayflower Descendants, referred to as GSMD or just the Mayflower Society. Our mission is to research the lineal descent of the Mayflower Pilgrims and also education about the Pilgrims who traveled aboard the Mayflower in 1620. We were founded in 1897 and in Plymouth. And actually, there were 4 state societies that were founded in the years prior to 1897, New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Pennsylvania. And they set the Mayflower Society up much like a government entity where we actually have a constitution and we have a Congress every 3 years. And the Congress meets to set the rules and all of that. And then the member societies at the state level all have control of their own organizations. So it's a little bit like the states and the national government, if you will. That is how we operate. So we've been around now for about 125 years. So our focus is on one voyage. It's the Mayflower that happened in 1620. So one ship. It left Plymouth, England on September 6th in 1620, bound for Virginia. They had a charter to area in the Virginia territory, which extended from New York to Florida. And their land patent, interestingly, was for the area around Manhattan. So that's where they were headed. They got to trying to get to the Hudson River. They encountered a lot of issues. They had dangerous shoals. They had terrible wind. They ended up going north. And lo and behold, they arrived in Massachusetts at Provincetown Harbor on November 11th, 1620. Just as winter was settling in. So while they were still on board ship, they actually signed the Mayflower Compact, which you may have heard of. Mayflower Compact is very famous as it was the first document in the New World that set up a government. And the reason they did this was because their authority and their governing structure was really based on the patent to the land in Manhattan. Because they didn't end up in Manhattan and they didn't end up with that land, their patent had no authority. So they needed to come up with their own government. So they signed the Mayflower Compact and agreed to combine together in one body to elect officers and discuss pertinent town issues. And the Mayflower Compact has really gained a lot of symbolic importance. And I will tell you, it's also still the model for our town meetings in New England, where twice a year we have a town meeting. All the town meeting members show up, you vote on things, you vote on the budget. So it's Mayflower Compact in 1620 has had a very long reach in terms of its impact on history. So they arrived in Provincetown Harbor. There were 102 passengers who departed from England. And I love this graphic because it really shows the Pilgrims, what their family groups were. They had a lot of the Pilgrims were religious refugees. So they were Protestants who felt stymied and stifled by the absolutist religious policies of King James I. And many of them had actually gone to Holland and were living in Holland, where there was more religious freedom, but they really feared that they were losing their English habits and beliefs, and they wanted to be able to form their own community. So you have the Pilgrims who were the religious refugees, but also on board the ship, you had what were called the strangers. And those were just English families or individuals who were looking for a better situation. So they called them saints and strangers, and there was roughly an even number. However, we refer to everybody who was on the ship as a pilgrim. So if you descended from one of these 102 folks, then you are eligible to join the Mayflower Society. Interestingly, among this group, there were 18 women, including 3 who were expecting, and 30 children. Some mothers brought their children with them. Other mothers meant to bring them over later. Many of them didn't get an opportunity to do that because after the first winter, there were only 51 pilgrims left. And again, this graphic to me says it all. You can see who did not make it through that first winter of the Great Sickness. So you had 4 women who survived the first year. And it's rather amazing that this colony actually survived. But one of the reasons it did is because you had more than 22 children that survived that sickness, and they played a large role in the success of the company. So out of these 51 surviving folks represent 26 families, and these are the names of all of the pilgrims. And from these 26 families, we now have an estimated 35 million Mayflower descendants. So it's a lot of descendants, and it's very cool to be a Mayflower descendant, but it is an honor that a lot of people in the world actually do share. So from these 26 families and from the Mayflower Society, we now have 31,000 members in our organization, and there have been 105,000 members since we started in 1897. So a lot of members, a lot of lineages. Each one of those 105,000 members represents one lineage that's been approved for that family. So we are, the member societies, there are actually 54 of them, and that includes 1 in each state and in Washington, D.C. We also have organizations in Canada, Australia, and Europe. So we are literally all over the world with our member societies. We are headquartered, as Sue said, in Plymouth, and we have 2 properties. One is the Mayflower Society campus with the Mayflower Society house on it. Behind this building, there is the research center and our administrative center. And then a couple of blocks away, we also own the Mayflower Meeting House. And the Meeting House is in the location of the Pilgrim's original meeting house. There have been 5 structures there over time. This one was built in 1897. And we acquired this a few years ago because the congregation was no longer able to survive. And so we're in the process of making this into a permanent Pilgrim exhibition center. Our research center, which is located at our headquarters, is focused entirely on genealogical resources. The library was founded in the 1960s. We actually have a position called the Historian General, and this is a national elected position. And the Historian General is in charge of setting the policies for our lineage, papers. What will we accept? What won't we accept? What are the procedures and policies? And the Historian General actually used to live on site on the property. They started building this library so they wouldn't have to go to Boston to do their research. And the library grew and grew until finally in 1990, they built this facility to house the library. And it's a lovely facility where we work. I'm very proud to work there. So there are 2 things we do at the research center. One is we have the library, we offer the genealogical resources, and the other is we conduct verification. So we have a team of 6 verifiers, and their job is to verify every lineage that is submitted. So we have about 2,500 applications submitted every year for membership. And the verifiers go through line by line, generation by generation. They verify all the original documents, and they are the ones that sign off on, yes, this is a valid lineage, or no, it is not. So in terms of our genealogical resources, we have a general collection, which is organized by state and region. And it consists mainly of published historical source materials, and it's all organized by location. So this includes vital records, church records, town and county histories, cemetery transcriptions, and court records, etc. We also have a large selection of Plymouth Colony related primary source materials and Plymouth Colony and Pilgrim related biographies and histories. Then we have our family genealogy collection, which consists of thousands of family genealogies. Some of them are in published form, some of them are in unpublished manuscripts. These go back quite a ways, and some of them are actually collections of, for example, family group sheets. So a wide selection. We don't always accept family genealogies as a source. So it depends on who wrote it. Did they use citations? Is there a self-interest there? Several different factors. But we have lots of family genealogies available. We also have a military collection, which is pension abstracts, muster rolls, military histories, etc. And then we have a periodicals collection. We have a whole periodicals room, which is mainly genealogical journals, such as the New England Historical and Genealogical Register and the National Genealogical Society Quarterly and the American Genealogist, etc. So that's the bulk of the collection that is in book form. We also have special collections. So we have our archival collection, which is mainly historical court records from Plymouth. And then we also have a Bible collection. We're currently working on organizing this and trying to make this available online. It is somebody was talking about digitization earlier as we were waiting for the presentation. And I can tell you it is the most commonly talked about thing at our research center is getting all of our records digitized so we can make them available online. We also have a vertical file with hundreds and hundreds of pamphlets, family records, and that type of thing. And last but not least, we have our applications. So you think about, there's 105,000 applications and counting. And in every application, there's a treasure trove of documents. So you will find original wills, a probate, affidavits, family records. There's all kinds of things to be found in these files. And I'm on the right is a picture of one of the files that went through a big fire that we had in 1947, which was unfortunate. It was when the organization was based in Boston. And luckily, we didn't really lose any files, but you see that some of them were damaged, and they all need to be copied, and so they can be preserved. But all of our applications are digitized, or in the process of being digitized. So it really is it's a bit of a conundrum as to how do we make these records available to genealogists like you, so that you know what we have. So if you're researching a particular person, you can find all the things that might be about them found in our files. So this represents about 120,000 proven lineages, because once you become a member and you prove your lineage, you can then do a supplemental membership. And that is, I can prove another lineage because I had ancestors and I have 2 lines. Some people have as many as 20 or 40 lines back to the Pilgrims. So you can do as many supplementals as you have lineages. And so that we have about 15,000 supplementals that have been done. So 120,000 applications in all. And this I just threw in for kicks. William Howard Taft, who was president of the United States in the early part of the 20th century, he applied for membership 3 times. Once when he was a professor of law at Yale, and he applied through Massachusetts, he was rejected. Then he applied when he was president of the United States through District of Columbia, and he was rejected. And not to be discouraged, a few years later, when he was Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, he applied again through California, and he was rejected again. So unfortunately, William Howard Taft did not have a valid line, but it was not for lack of trying on his part. We do have our catalogs online. If you go to our website, the mayflowersociety.org, and you go to the research center, visit the research center, you'll come to this page and you'll see we have the family genealogies, the general collection, the archives listed alphabetically by family, and then we have periodicals catalog. So you can look at those resources online and request copies, pages, documents. You can request any of that from us. We're currently working on our ebook collection because we have a lot of ebooks. We have a lot of books that we have scanned. So we're figuring out how to get that online and make that available to you and other researchers. We're just trying to sort out copyright and some of those issues, but hopefully within the next 6 months or so, we'll have those all online. And finally, I want to mention the Silver Books. The Silver Books, I think, is one of the Mayflower Society's greatest contributions to genealogy. If you don't know what they are, these are documenting the first 5 generations of the Mayflower families. And this was an idea that started in 1959. Someone at the board level said, hey, we should trace out the first 5 generations of Mayflower descendants and publish it in a book. They had absolutely no idea what they were getting into or the scope of the project. They began documenting the lineages using applications, using lots of volunteers in family histories and records. It took them almost 20 years to get the first volume published. That was 1975. Since then, a catalog of 43 books has been published. Many of these have multiple parts to them. So they'll have 3 or 4 parts for volume 19, for example. So the silver books prove the first 5 generations, and then they often mention the 6th generation, the birth of the 6th generation. Right now, what we're presently working on are fully documenting the 6th and 7th generations of these families. I know we just had one volume that just came out a week or 2 ago that was on Thomas Rogers. It was part 4 of that genealogy, and it was the 6th generation. So a lot of silver books. There are more in development. There's silver books research going on all the time to prove these generations. Unfortunately, these are not available as electronic books, although I really hope they can be at some point so that more people can take advantage of them. So those are the historical resources that we have to offer. So let's talk a little bit about your Mayflower lineage and how do you know if you have one? And what do you do if you find one? So we're going to start with a family tree. So you're all working on genealogy. I'm sure you've all done a family tree. I know I've got one on Family Search and Ancestry. You've also got ancestries at American Ancestors. So what I did was I put my genealogy into Family Search. And lo and behold, as it populated different generations, I found James Chilton down here, who James Chilton was one of those 102 passengers on the Mayflower. So I'm descended from one of his daughters, and that got me started because I had no idea that I had a Mayflower line. So this gave me a place to start. But you all know about these online family trees. You have to be very, very careful of the information. So I'm just suggesting this is a place to start. It is not where you're going to go to get your research, but it does give you a place to start. The other thing you can do, I'm sure you know about relativefinder.org. You can put your family search tree into Relative Finder, and you see down here, James Chilton shows up as a Mayflower passenger. That's one of the groups that they look at. They also look at presidents and famous people and famous musicians and Declaration of Independence signers and all kinds of things. So here again, James Chilton shows up on my Relative Finder. So if you don't have a Mayflower Pilgrim that's showing up for you, where do you start? Well, think about in your family, did you have any stories about Mayflower ancestors? I know in my family, we had a story that we were descended from Peregrine White. And Peregrine White was the first white baby born in the New World. He was born on the Mayflower ship after they anchored in Provincetown Harbor. So that was the story. So that gives me a place to start. You can also look at your family tree for ancestors from New England. And the hot spots in New England to look for are Plymouth County, Barnstable County, which is Cape Cod, where I happen to live, New London, Connecticut, Rhode Island, but not Providence, Rhode Island, and coastal Maine. And interestingly, the Pilgrim descendants did not, as a general rule, go south. They went west in later generations. So if I go back to look at my line that I had in Family Search, I can look at, okay, through the generations, I come down to generation 5 is New London, Connecticut. Okay, that sounds exactly right. Generation 6, New London, Connecticut. Okay, I'm good. Generation 7, Gloucester, Virginia. Okay, that tells me there's a problem because I know the Pilgrims didn't go south. So right here, I'm suspicious that this may not be true. You've also got a different spelling of the name, which is not that big of a deal because we frequently find that a father and son can spell their last names differently. But this not going south rule leads me to believe I've got a problem with this line. So if you think you do have a pilgrim match, one of the other things you can do is you can purchase a Mayflower lineage match from the Mayflower Society. If you go onto our website, Explore Your Roots, you can do a Mayflower match. What we do is for $75, you give us the line that you think you have. So I think this line goes from me back up to William Brewster. And here's who I think is in the line. You give that to us. And what we're going to do is we're going to run that through our family tree software. So we actually use a program called TNG, and that presently has 451,000 names in it. So it's quite a massive file. That's not all the names. We still haven't finished putting everything in, but it will, between the family tree records that we check and our silver books that we check, we can usually do a pretty good idea of telling you whether or not you have a potential valid line. And what we'll do is we'll say, your line is valid. We have an application to match your line down to generation 8 or generation 10 or generation 4, whatever we can match to. And then when you do your application, you don't necessarily have to reprove those generations that are already proven. Now, when I did the Mayflower lineage match for my line, guess what? I didn't go any farther than this 6th generation. I already have them documented in the silver books, which again, this tells me this is a problem. So the Mayflower lineage match is one way that you can compare your records to our records to see what you come up with. So if you think you have a line, you're ready to establish your line. The Mayflower passenger is considered by us as generation 1. And then you have your generation, which right now we're usually seeing your generation 13, 14, or 15. That's what we tend to be seeing right now. You want to work from yourself backwards to the pilgrim and collect at least one document for every generation you have to establish your line. Now, you're going to need more documents than that, but getting at least one document will help you prove, okay, this is a valid line, and it's worth me taking the time to dig farther to see what else I have to come up with. The records to search are obviously the census records, and that's especially 1880 and after, when the census records prove relationships. Before 1880, they have nothing on there about who's related to who. So they're not as useful as 1880 onward. The vital records, church records, land records, local histories, scholarly journals, newspapers, court records, etc. Those are the things you're going to be looking for to document your line. Once you get that line established, then you can go back and dig further. We do recommend that you maintain a research log. I'm sure Sue is teaching you all about researching and logging your information. We say cite the records as you go and note the negative searches. As you probably already know, if you don't note your negative searches, you're going to go round and round in a circle. And believe me, I've done this. I've been doing family genealogy for about 20 years. And I have spent a lot of time spinning my wheels because I didn't write down what searches I did. So document the searches as you go. Of course, you're going to want to use the silver books in your research. In addition to the silver books, there are what we call the pink books, because I guess we like to call books by their color. So the pink books are George Soule, who is one of the Mayflower passengers, and he has not had his official silver book done yet, so he's in these temporary pink volumes. You also have John Howland, who was another one of the more colorful Mayflower passengers, and he is represented in the blue books. These books were published by a different publisher. So to make the set complete, you kind of need the pink books and the blue books as well. And you can look to your local library system. There's a lot of the member societies throughout the United States have made an effort to get silver books into their local libraries. And Sue will have to tell us if she has them there in the research library at the college, but this is, you can look locally or perhaps borrow them through interlibrary loan. And someday there'll be electronic copies. So you go back to my line and I check the silver books, only takes me this far, and then it mentions this guy. So again, I can't get beyond the 6th generation. I do not, I'm ready to toss this line out because I do not think it is valid. There are also 2 online Mayflower databases. So we have a contract with Family Search, and Family Search has helped us digitize all of our applications. So all those documents we were talking about, all the applications, and also American Ancestors, which is the New England Historical and Genealogical Society, they also have the applications. What they also have at American Ancestors is they have the Mayflower family's 5th generation descendants. So out of those silver books, their database contains all of the 5th generation. So you can use these online databases to find information. If you go to American Ancestors, you'll find it under signature projects, and you see beyond the Mayflower, and it will take you to a landing page. You scroll down the landing page, and it brings you to the world's biggest searchable Mayflower database. And you can click on that to get to their search engine, General Society of Mayflower Descendants, membership applications. Now, these only go through 1920 because of privacy issues. We don't do the last 100 years. But so if you're looking for somebody, it could be somebody you think is an early pilgrim, or it could be somebody you're looking for, in the 1800s, early 1900s. If you have their name, you can see if they're in here and what records they have on them. As I said, Family Search also has this material. If you go to their website to search and look under genealogies, they have something called community trees. You view all the trees in that collection. Will bring you to the Mayflower Pilgrim genealogies. And that will provide you with this search engine so you can do the same thing. The beauty of Family Search is that it's free, whereas where American Ancestors isn't necessarily free. So those are 2 important online databases. So as we've talked about, when you're looking at your generations 1 through 6 are pretty easy to document because you have the silver books, you have the online databases, you have all of these applications that have been proven over the last 125 years. So a lot of informations for gens 1 through 6. I won't say they're easy, but I will just say they're you're more apt to be able to kind of walk into that information. Then you have generations 7 through 10. And I'm not going to lie to you, these generations can be very challenging. Well, what the Pilgrims did was they started going west, the Descendants. So they moved into Western Mass, then they moved into New York and Pennsylvania, then Ohio, and then the Midwestern states beyond. So I know for my ancestors that followed that trajectory, kind of Massachusetts, New York to Pennsylvania to Ohio to Indiana, it's been very difficult to locate sources. I have people migrating in 1820. Indiana became a state in 1816. There are no vital records being kept. There are no marriage certificates being kept. So you don't get into vital records until the mid 1800s. But you can certainly find land records, which are very helpful, as well as church records, probate records, and family genealogies can be helpful. Especially helpful for this migration pattern can be these genealogies that were done in a lot of communities in the late 1800s and early 1900s. And sometimes they're called brag books, where ancestor gets, somebody gets to brag about their family, and they talk about, the first settler came here from Massachusetts and settled in Ohio, and then in 1837 moved to Jay County, Indiana. So those brag books can document some of this Western migration, which is really helpful. But these generations, they're challenging, and a lot of times that is where people get stuck when they're trying to prove their lineage. And then you have one of the places to find information is Family Search Research Wiki, which I'm sure you all know about, but they actually have a selection that is called Descendancy Research. And so this one I pulled up for Massachusetts. It gives you links to all of the resources that might be helpful to you. Generations 11 through 15, much easier, they're more recent. You've got vital records, and we do suggest obtaining the long form that lists parents, and you'll see why that's important here in a minute. But you have birth, death, and marriage certificates. There are the Family Search Research Wiki has a lot of great information on where to get vital records in different states, where to get the county and town records. I know for New England, there's a genealogist handbook that lists all the municipalities in New England and where you can actually write for vital records. So I don't know what might be available in Midwest and the West, but that is certainly helpful when you're doing New England research. Now, I wanted to take a minute and tell you about proof of same. This is the standard that differentiates the Mayflower Society from other lineage organizations. Other lineage organizations do not require this. We are alone in that. So what it means is that you have to prove that the person on the birth line is the same person that is on the marriage line. So this Daniel Smith, who married Mary Snow, how do we know for sure he's the same Daniel Smith that is the son of Jack Smith and Jill Jones? How do we know that for sure? Well, we know that for sure by providing documents that show parents. So you need to make sure you have at least one document on the birth line that shows parents of the line carrier, and one document on the marriage line that shows parents. And this sometimes can be hard to find these records. That's why probates and wills are sometimes very helpful, land records, those kinds of things. They're not always on the vital record. In later years, yes, it's much easier, but especially in those earlier years, it can be a little bit challenging. So that proof of same is something that trips up a lot of people who are trying to do their Mayflower genealogy. So it's a really important concept to understand. And I think it's just good genealogy to make sure. It's like the person in my line that I think is not valid because he's in Virginia while while the other part of the line is in Connecticut. So I've got to prove that he's that same person. And the only way I do that is with parents. Examples of documents for proof of same: marriage records, again, the long form. You might have marriage or anniversary announcements, death certificates, often name parents. So sometimes you can use a death certificate as the proof on the marriage line for the parents. A family genealogy, funeral documents, census, cemetery records, etc. Now, the other thing I thought it might be interesting to touch upon is our DNA policy. And I'm not sure how much you have studied DNA yet, but DNA has made genealogy very interesting over the last few years. And we do have a DNA policy. It's only can be used in a very constrained circumstance. So DNA does not replace the exhaustive search that needs to be done for evidence. Doesn't replace that. It complements that. And in our policy, you can only use DNA to prove one generation where you might be lacking traditional evidence. So if you see down here, I can use DNA to connect Howard Smith to Calvin Smith, but I can't use it to connect Howard Smith to George Smith. And I certainly can't use it to connect myself to a Mayflower passenger some 13 generations ago. So it's a very limited circumstance under which you can use it. You do have to write a proof argument. Now, we are in the process of reviewing the DNA policy. We want to make sure that we're up to date on the latest technology and what DNA can do for us, and that our policy is reflective of that. And we're actually working with Blaine Bettinger, who is one of the country's leading expert in genetic genealogy. He is helping us with that policy. We did have a situation this past year where one of the approved Mayflower passengers, Matthew Fuller, was shown by DNA to have not been a Mayflower passenger. So he was a little sketchy all along. There wasn't great documentation for him, but there was a big Y DNA project done on the Fuller family where they brought in relatives from direct patrial lines to look at their DNA. And they were able to conclude that Matthew Fuller could not be the son of Edward Fuller, who was the Mayflower passenger. So we had 1,500 members who had been previously approved for Matthew Fuller, including a board member, that we now had to tell they were rejected, which was a very hard thing to do and did not go over well. But genealogy is the same as it was 50 years ago, but it's also very different because you do have DNA now, because you do have access to resources in a way we never did before. So we are finding new information, and sometimes that means we have a lineage that could not be proven that is now proven. That happened just the other day. Or we find, as in the Matthew Fuller case, that we have a lineage that was thought to be okay that is now disproven. So DNA can be very helpful. You have to know how to use it, and you have to make sure you're still doing the exhaustive search for evidence. So some interesting DNA developments at the Mayflower Society. So if you are interested in becoming a member of the Mayflower Society, you actually want to start with the member societies. I know Sue is a member of the Nevada Society. We have historians at each of the 54 societies, and they will help you. So they will provide you with a worksheet. This is what our worksheet looks like for our application. And you start with the Mayflower passenger and work your way down. And again, the member historian will help you. We use references over here that are a little bit like hieroglyphics. It's a very strange coding system that they will help you put all of that together if you're interested. So I hope that you will think about doing your Mayflower research, seeing if you have an ancestor, and we'd love to have you as a member. We'd also love to have you make use of our resources. And please feel free to look at our online catalogs. And if you have something that you could be helpful, we're happy to make a copy of it and send that out to you. And I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Barbara. Okay, I'll open it up to the floor. I've got a million questions myself, but I'll let the class start. If you have a question, go ahead and please unmute your microphone, leave your camera off, and go ahead and ask Barbara. Let's see here. I've got some while I'm waiting for someone to unmute. Let's see here. One of the questions in the chat box is, can anyone search your digital records? You covered that already. And about what year would the 5th generation have lived?
You're talking that's the 1790s. No, wait, 5th generation. That's going to be the early 1700s.
Okay, and then there's another question in the chat box that says, is there a free online copy anywhere of Torrey's, I think that means New England marriages, with the source references? I know the film manuscript is available, but much of it is not readable. I realize this is really just an index, not a true source.
I don't know if we have that or not. I will tell you that I am relatively new. I've been with the organization 6 months, so I'm still getting to learn what our resources are. So I don't know where that is available, but you can email us, researchcenter@themayflowersociety.org, and we can see if we can help you find an answer to that.
Okay, and you mentioned that you get about 2,500 applications per year. Just out of curiosity, I know you probably can't give me an exact number, but what kind of percentage are accepted versus rejected?
A very large, it's just a very small percentage that is rejected. So yeah, I don't know what the percentage is, but I would say less than 5%. One of the things that happens, though, is if you don't have enough evidence, it may go to pending. And so we allow you to look for, like, we will tell you, hey, you don't have enough evidence on generation 8, but we're going to put this in pending, and we're going to give you 6 months to try to come up with that additional evidence. So you have up to a year, actually, that you can find that. But it's really a small number that's rejected. I would say because the applicants are working with the member society historians, and our member society historians are pretty good about knowing what'll pass and what won't, helping you find the resources and making sure you've got a good line before it's submitted.
Okay, another question in the chat box. Questions about biographies of individual Mayflower passengers. Do you have a book recommendation for John Howland? I am interested in that person's life and not just the family tree lineage names.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know the answer to that either, but if you email us, researchcenter@themayflowersociety.org, we can get a recommendation for you.
And you showed a picture of the wonderful library, or actually several pictures of your wonderful library. Is that in one of the 2 buildings that you own, or is the library located in a different location altogether?
Our research building is located behind the Mayflower Society House. So we have in Plymouth this little campus. It's got the Mayflower Society House on it, which is huge, 1800s house. And then behind that is the research center and the administrative center. And we have a beautiful garden as well. So come visit us.
You had showed your research center on your webpage.
Mm-hmm.
Do you mind showing that in live? Because you kind of glanced over it a little bit. I think probably it would be to benefit the class. to actually see it in actual work. Do you mind doing that? Could you share your screen and go to the website?
No, I'd be happy to. Can you see it?
Yes,
Okay. So this is the website. There's a lot of information on here. We do have information about each of the passengers. So the question about John Hallen, there is information on each of those passengers here. You can click over here. The Hallen family was very prolific, I can tell you that. A lot of Hallens. If you go to, we also have, interestingly, a Patriot to Passenger program, and this is actually done by one of our volunteers, and it's descendants whom are known to have been in the Revolutionary War, and we maintain a listing of that. So a lot of information here to learn. Mayflower Compact, Women of the Mayflower, How to Dress Like a Pilgrim, in case you're interested in that. We also have a lecture series that explores genealogical topics, but also other things. And we're having Caleb Johnson, who is known throughout the United States for his Mayflower scholarship. But he'll be talking about the Mayflower and her passengers on February 10th. These are all free webinars. And then we have other New England topics, just different things. We do genealogy, and I've been thinking about doing a genealogical specific program, but we haven't committed to that yet. So we'd love to have you join us for one of those presentations, and you'll find that right on our homepage. There's tips and tools. There are all kinds of things to help you get started in doing your own genealogy. We have webinars and other resources. And then when you visit, this is where you can go to the Research Center, and that's where you'll find the online catalogs. It's right down here. And you can, and there's our email address and our phone number. You can call us anytime to request information, and we're happy to help. And as I said, we are working to get more of our resources online. If any of you know of anybody who wants an internship, we got lots of things to do, and we're looking for interns to help us do that. Now, any other questions about that, the website?
I'll let the class go ahead and speak up if you have questions about the website. Okay, while we're waiting for more questions to come in, Bill from Texas in the chat box says, in the photo you just showed, was the Mayflower replica ship actually painted pink?
Painted pink. No, it's not pink. It does have a little like maroon stripe on it in that particular model. And it's actually our colors. The Mayflower Society's colors are pink and blue. It's like babies, but those are the Mayflower Society colors. So we do see that pink color a lot of places around our campus.
You had mentioned, Barbara, during your presentation that that I could go over the access to silver books and so on. Our library does have a complete set of silver books that are current.
Great.
I just recently checked your website to make sure that all of ours are current, and the only one we're lacking is the new one that just came out on Thomas Rogers.
The Rogers, yeah. And there's a 3-volume index, yay, that is now at the printer. And so that will be released in the spring, but that is because there's no overall index to these 44 volumes. So we're very excited that that is going to be coming out in the spring.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So you have to get that. Yeah.
Yes. And we also have all of the pink books and the green books. So for anybody who lives here locally, I know we have people who are logging in today from out of northern Nevada area. But if you are in the Northern Nevada area, we do have the complete silver books minus the one that just came out, like I mentioned. We have the pink and the green books. So please feel free to come use our library. Anytime our library is open, you're welcome to use those books. And if you do come to our library, please bring a thumb drive with you, because that's how we no longer have a copy machine. Everything's done through scanning now. So make sure to bring a thumb drive with you if you're going to do that. Now, we don't have the blue books, so I was particularly interested in the blue books. Can you touch on that a little bit more?
Yeah, I can't remember. I think those were published by the Howland Society. They worked with a different publisher. So this was many decades ago. There was a little bit of a back and forth between the Howland Society and the Mayflower Society about who was going to publish the book. And the Howland Society ended up getting that published. So it's not one of the silver books. There are also some issues with it. Honestly, there are issues with all of these publications because it depends on the quality of the researcher who was doing it. What we're seeing now is that a lot of times the records that they used show a picture that is possible, but we don't accept possible. We accept probable. So the difference being probable means there's some primary evidence to support this. Possible means there's no primary evidence to support this. So we actually have somebody on staff who does nothing but corrections to the silver books. And we have a massive document that logs all the corrections so that when they go back to reprint it, they can make all the corrections that have been found by members, by member historians, by our own team, and they can update those resources. But it is when you have as many people in any one volume as these books contain, there's going to be some mistakes. So it really is a constant effort to try to keep these up to date.
You'd also touched on different spellings of surnames. Would that affect an acceptance of an application if you spell it one way when maybe perhaps it was spelled a different way?
No, we see it all the time. You have a birth record for somebody that spells their last name one way, and a marriage record for the same person who spells their name a different way. Or you have the marriage certificate, which shows one last name for the groom and another last name with a slightly different spelling for the father. So it happens all of the time, and it's not uncommon in those days that whoever was doing the writing only had so much literacy, and there was not standardization. So we really do see that all the time.
Now, you talked a little bit about proof of same. I always kind of assumed, and maybe I was wrong in this assumption, but I always kind of assumed that the reason for that is because when you do the silver books, the parents of the spouse are covered in the silver books. Is the proof of same to make sure that, in future silver books, that the proof of the spouses is there, or is there a different reason for it? Or is that just one of the many reasons?
Well, the proof of same really is targeted towards the line carrier. So if you don't have proof of same for a spouse, it's not going to get necessarily get your application rejected, because the spouses are important, but it's the line carrier that we care about. And proof of same is really just to prove it's the same person, because if you don't have those parents, how do you know that that's the same Daniel Smith as was born? And, sometimes from a geography perspective, it's self-evident. It makes sense. But, you could have two people with the same name living in the same community. You've got to prove which one is the one who married your line carrier, the person that is carrying the line. So that's proof of same, is just to ensure you've got the right lineage.
Well, that kind of brings me to my next question. What is it that you're looking for in a proof argument? I mean, I know you're not going to give me like, word for word what you expect, but kind of like give my class like, just a basic outline. What would be in paragraph 1, what would be in paragraph 2, so on and so on.
Well, we follow the genealogical standard for proof arguments. So we are always giving people that language, but really you've got to have a beginning which lays out the argument, and you've got to have an ending that summarizes the argument, and you've got to have citations for everything. A lot of times we'll get proof arguments and they don't have citations, but it's, we can't accept that. So it's, and I think, our historians are for the most part volunteers. So we have different levels of expertise among our historians. Usually they're writing the proof argument, and sometimes the actual potential member writes a proof argument if they have some background in genealogy. But we want to make sure it's got a beginning, it's got a summary, and that you lay out all the evidence and cite it well to make the case. It doesn't have to be long, depending on what you're trying to prove, but it does need to have kind of a beginning, middle, and end, and to check off those boxes.
Great. Okay. Now, you mentioned access to American Ancestors. I just wanted to let the class know, since it is a subscription database, you can go to most LDS libraries there locally wherever you live, and most often they will have free access to that. So I just wanted to point that out because of course, some of the people are on limited budgets, and every little bit of information about where they can get information for free will help.
And we also offer that at our library in case any of you ever visiting. We have all the subscriptions, newspapers, etc. And for our library users can use all of those online tools.
Now, you also covered something about how many people have many pilgrim ancestors, not just one. There's
Right.
kind of a saying here locally in the chapter I belong, or into the colony I belong to, that if you have one Mayflower Pilgrim ancestor, you probably have multiple. Now, one of the most common questions I get is, then how do you find if you have multiple? Is there like a source of where you can go? I mean, you pointed out Relative Finder, but unfortunately, a lot of times Relative Finder is based on the tree that is inside Family Search, and they're not always accurate. So,
Right.
is there a way, like, you can confirm if you have, or easily, I should say, confirm if you have more than one Mayflower ancestor, if you've already been approved for one?
It's pretty easy. By most of those a lot of those multiple lines are going to be in those early generations when there were only so many people here and they were all intermarrying. So and some of them, like Priscilla Mullins marries John Alden. So right there, if you're descended from them, you've got 2 Mayflower lines. Plus you've got Priscilla Mullins' father, William Mullins. So right there, just from one line, you could actually have 3 layers of descent. Sometimes we've got one person who has, I think, 10 different lines from Stephen Hopkins. So it's just multiple ancestors marrying into one branch or another of the Howland family. But I would say look at those early generations, look at the silver books, and you can also do the Mayflower lineage match. And if you're looking for, I have this line and I want to know if I have any other lines, that we will look at that for you.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, that's great to know. Now, I wanted to share just a very brief story about when I joined the Mayflower Society. It took me like 2 years because I was working full time and I only had time on weekends to do research. And I'd have to go to all these different libraries all over Southern California because I lived in Southern Cal at the time. And it took me forever to find my all the proof that I needed, because the historian I was working with said, okay, I'll verify the first 5. You verify everything from 6 down to 14. And so I said, okay. And like I said, it took me 2 years, but then I hit a snap, just like you were talking about in that time period, 7 through 10, I believe it was. I hit a snap.
Yep.
And I spent forever going from library to library and writing different archives all, throughout the country, looking for that one piece of proof. And so then I got so frazzled. One day I picked up the phone, I called Plymouth, and I happened to get the librarian. And I told her what my problem was, and she says, "Oh my gosh, I have the family Bible here in Plymouth." And there you go. She had it. She sent me a copy. I sent it in, and the application went through. But I guess
Amazing.
what astounded me is that I did not know that I could actually reach out to the librarian as I was doing my application for him.
Yeah. Yeah, the historians can also reach out. They can support you and reach out to the library, but you can contact our library with questions and queries anytime. And again, you can also see we're working on the Bible collection, but a lot of those Bible records are already listed in that alphabetical listing of the archives. So you can go online and actually look at that and see, do we have any records that pertain to your family? That's only a small swath of what we have, but also a phone call and an email will get you a little deeper into the issue.
Okay, Karen just put down in the chat box, thanks. I'm going to
Great.
John Howland, Elizabeth Tilley, and Hannah Helen. I'll look for supplements. Great. That's wonderful, Karen. That's exciting.
Great. Yeah. Very nice.
Okay, so I'll open the floor once again to the class. Anybody want to unmute your microphone and ask a question directly to our guest speaker? Give it a few seconds here. No? Okay, well, I'm kind of surprised because we talk about the Mayflower so often.
Nice.
But I think you probably answered all the questions they had, and certainly I learned
Great.
some things today too, so I'm very excited about that. So I will say thank you very, very much, Barbara, not only for your wonderful expertise today, but also for allowing us to record. It was very much appreciated. And it'll take a
Sure.
couple weeks, but it'll be up on our school webpage on our YouTube channel.
Great. Well, I'm very happy to be here. And again, don't hesitate to email us, call us if we can help you track down a resource or some source evidence. And I wish you all a very happy new year.
Well, thank you, and to you as well. And I'll go ahead and stop the
Okay.
recording. Bye-bye, Barbara.
All right, great. Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you so much.